Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Travis back with another episode of the Rep by Rep Strength Podcast. So, tonight I just want to give a couple updates from the week, things that I had noticed from training this past week and things I had thought of that you may find helpful and interesting. So, before we get started, if you are not yet, make sure you get signed up for my newsletter that comes out every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can do that at travisbarrett.com/email. So, secondly, a project that I'm working on that I hope to get finished and published by next week, and putting the finishing touches on everything right now, is a free Facebook group that is specifically targeted for dads. So, being a dad with 2 kids, I get it. I absolutely understand the busyness of life, and I've figured out my way through training and nutrition and recovery and how to prioritize and get the best return on my time, so to speak. So I just thought I would put together a free Facebook group that is called Strong Dads. And I'm getting the finishing touches put on that, but it will be a private group for dads only. And in there, it's open to all dads, whether you are, you've never touched a weight before, or you're an expert level strength athlete or whatever. The point is that it's going to be a spot where we can talk about training, nutrition, recovery, how to optimize your time, how to optimize your health, and prioritize different stages you may be at. So anyway, that's the second piece of news. So moving on. So this past week had a lot of stuff going on. So one of the coolest parts about my career is that I get the opportunity to work with a wide variety of people. I've worked with everyone from CEOs, attorneys, federal judges, hospitalists, engineers, to athletes that are that have Division I scholarships and are currently playing Division I football. And most recently, over the past 2 years, since I've moved up here to Spokane, I've got the opportunity to work with Air Force Special Operations, and also helping guys prepare for what's called Special Tactics Squadrons, and helping them with their prep work from a physical standpoint, and helping them train for those positions. And so far, so good. A lot of them we've cleaned up a lot of movement patterns, helped them get rid of a lot of pain and discomfort that they were having because they had, basically imbalances. We addressed some range of motion issues, and then from there we instilled proficiency in basic movement patterns, and then kind of reset everything and began loading the system again, and then they're hitting new records and they're feeling good and they're not in any pain, which is most important. So, and they can achieve new ranges of motion that they couldn't do before. So, anyway, I look at that and I think, some of these guys, they're very, very driven, and, they are doing things that are very demanding on their body. And, I come in and help them out and coach them and introduce things that I think are fundamental and someone should have covered with them at the beginning of their career. And I think any good strength coach would have done the same, would have made the same decisions I made. They would have recognized what these guys needed and helped them out, coached them, and told them what they need, and they would have seen improvement. And yet again, This last week I was surprised because I was working with a national level soccer player, and she has been playing soccer for, since she was 5 years old, and she's 28, maybe 29, and she came in because she had a hip issue, and I had to look at her hip, so I basically asked her to trot 20 yards, just nice easy trot. Let me see what's going on. Let me see if she can even do it, and then see what kind of compensation patterns she's making based on her pain level. And anyway, I was like, okay, before we even talk about weight training and all that stuff, has anybody ever worked with you and shown you how to foam roll? Has anybody ever shown you how to perform body tempering or use a lacrosse ball to release tight areas, anything like that? Have you ever taken care of the bottoms of your feet? And her answer to all of it was no. Nobody has ever taken the time to show her any of that stuff, which blew my mind, And she said they don't really get into weight training too much. It's more the sport coach is interested in contacts and just getting field time and all that stuff, which is great. But athletes do need to perform some type of resistance training to some degree. So we just went through for about 45 minutes and just used a foam roller and a lacrosse ball and worked from the bottom up. So we started working, with the bottoms of her feet and rolling out her plantar fascia. And then we worked on her calves, hamstrings, quads, upper back, lats, with the foam roller and lacrosse ball. And she was full on sweating at different points because of how knotted up she was. And after we would roll each area, I would have her hop up and perform another trot. And every time she would talk about, wow, I feel lighter. I'm in less pain. I don't hurt as bad. I didn't realize my hip could feel like that. Things that I consider basic. I forget at times that people often overlook the basics, and they think there's a lot more to performance. They look at the hardest issue first for some reason. They think it needs to be a lot more advanced than it really is before asking the appropriate question of, have the basics been covered? Yes or no? And have the basics been covered very, very well? Yes or no? And then, only then, after the basics have been covered, can we begin to move into intermediate, advanced, and then elite level exercise selection, recovery modalities, and things of that nature. Because people need to think of performance in regards that it's a slow graduation process. You must prove it at each joint angle. You must prove it with every loading at that specific joint angle before you can add weight, before you can add more exercise, more capacity, all of it. It has to be correct at the most fundamental level before we get into any kind of fancy stuff. So anyway, she's been doing great, and we're going to see what she does in terms of compliance with the soft tissue work before we even begin to talk about training and all that stuff as far as the weight room goes. Because when you work with somebody, what you're looking for first is you're looking to give them a small piece of information, ask them to comply with it, and then see what that compliance rate looks like. Because if their compliance rate sucks, obviously they're going to have terrible results, or they may not even see a result. Perfect example. There was someone I was working with recently online, and they told me they wanted X, Y, and Z result. And said, okay, great. We line that out, and then I go back and look at the compliance rate, and the compliance rate has been just above 50%. And obviously, this person's results have not been what they had told me they were hoping for. And you can only do so much. You can only give people so much information. So you start small, see what they do, and then if they don't do anything with that, then they haven't earned the right to learn more. So there are a ton of different ways to evaluate KPIs, key performance indicators that are both positive and negative, and it depends on the individual, it depends on their goals, what they want, what they're going to see as, hey, this is a success or this is a failure. So when I look at that stuff, it's highly specific to the goals of the individual, but what I look at is you're not going to maximize everything all at once. You're going to be better served by looking at 1 to 2 metrics that you really want to improve for a given block of training and concentrating on those 1 to 2 metrics. And then maybe the next block, those things that you developed, maybe we back off of those slightly and then focus on another 1 or 2 metrics that are different that we would like to bring up, so to speak. So, those are important things to keep in mind when you are looking at training. So, just let's see. That was one thing I wanted to bring up from the past week. Another one was what I saw with my daughters the other night. So my daughters, getting them to eat anything in the summertime is a challenge. So I've got to look at, all right, what are some calorically dense foods that are that they'll eat that have a high return in terms of like a nutrient profile. So and what I mean there is like, a handful of cashews is going to be healthier than a pint of ice cream, obviously. So, I try to get them foods that they enjoy eating so they'll at least consume something, because for some reason, their appetite just goes down in the summertime, that it's hot. They just don't want to eat. So anyway, last week, they were talking about, man, we really want noodles. We really want noodles from this Chinese restaurant that we always get takeout from. And I was like, all right, cool. So I go get them Chinese food, come back, and both girls, I've got 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. Both girls are insistent, because the 3-year-old watches whatever the 7-year-old does. And whatever the 7-year-old is doing, the 3-year-old is trying to do. And anyway, the 7-year-old decides, I want to use chopsticks. All right. She's never used chopsticks before, but she decides she wants to use them. And then my 3-year-old looks at her and goes, well, I want chopsticks too. All right, cool. You've never used chopsticks either, so here you go. So if you can imagine, there's 2 little girls trying to use chopsticks that they've never used before. They've just seen me use them here and there, and they're trying to eat their noodles, and they are getting increasingly frustrated because they have a chopstick in each hand, and sometimes they'll get frustrated and then put the chopsticks in one hand, and then they'll split it up. Like they're trying to learn how to do it on the fly. So their whole life they've used forks and spoons. And now for some reason they've just decided, hey, we're going to jump to chopsticks tonight. And I was laughing just watching them because, shortly thereafter they wanted to grab a fork or whatever. But I thought, man, I see the same thing from people when they're training, is they want to jump into the most advanced, hardest thing before they've even mastered, the basics of, like a fork and a spoon, for example. People want to jump in way over their head with nutrition. They want to, I want to lose 25 pounds of pure fat over the next 12 weeks. It's like, well, good luck. And they haven't even mastered, well, are you compliant with 90% of your meals? Yes or no? Well, no. The answer is yes or no. So that's just an example of, I'll see people do that with nutrition. I'll see them do that with training. They'll want to jump into a very complex exercise and loading parameters and do all of these things before they've mastered, well, can you even squat your body weight? Okay, cool, you did it once out of those 10 reps, you did a good job. Can you do it all 10 times in a row? Those are things I look at. But I would urge you to ask those questions, when you're making any kind of goals or giving yourself any kind of KPI for evaluating success or failure of a cycle. So anyway, just a couple things I thought of and wanted to bring you up to speed to on from this week. So final thing that I just now remembered is that if you have, tweaked a muscle or, you were just moving around and something just feels off and it's not feeling right. As long as it is not a major injury of some kind, and major injuries like you're going to the ER or there's severe discoloration, things like that. As long as you don't have anything like that going on, let me give you some advice. Do not just stop moving. Because a lot of people will tweak something or injure something mildly, and then they'll just use that as an excuse to take the next 6, 8, 12 weeks off and obviously see no progress. I would suggest you get out and do what you can with what you've got, even including the injured limb, if it's a limb. And here's why. If I've tweaked my knee and my knee hurts, I'm still going to work it through as much range of motion as I can, and I'll go as slow as I need to, but I will still work it through as much range of motion as I can, as frequently as I can tolerate, because that will bring more blood to the area. If there is more blood brought to the area, then I'm going to have more red blood cells carrying oxygen to the area, and it's going to help it heal at a quicker rate. The people who have injuries last longer are the ones who stop all movement and don't do anything. So again, going back to my analogy here of, if I've tweaked my knee, rather than just stop all movement, if I've tweaked my right knee, I'm going to still walk as much as I'm able. I'm going to work my left leg as much as I'm able. And then I'm going to obviously train my upper body as much as I can. And I'm going to do as much as I can for as long as I can tolerate. And then from there, I may modify or adjust things. So if it is a knee, maybe I go get in the pool and swim around in the pool for an hour. Or maybe for conditioning purposes, I get on an arm ergometer and do something like that. Don't get married to it must be this and it must be that as far as exercise goes. Be creative. Think of different ways you can modify things. So anyway, realize it's a lot of info from tonight. So if you have questions about anything, please drop me a line at jtbarrettfitness@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, enjoy your week.